The Galactic Council chamber was a monument to everything the stars had achieved. A dome of living glass shimmered high above, reflecting the swirling light of 1,000 distant suns. Below it, tiers upon tiers of seats curved in endless circles, filled with beings from every known civilization: reptilian, insectoid, crystalline, gaseous, machine-born. Each had come to witness the event the news networks called the Great Admission. Today, a new species was to join the council. A young one, a primitive one, the species called humans. At first glance, no one even noticed when the human arrived. He was small, almost fragile, against the towering forms of the galaxy's oldest races. While the others glittered in armor or glowed with biolight, the human wore only a plain black suit and a thin silver pin in the shape of his planet, a tiny blue circle. He walked slowly, deliberately, down the marble walkway that split the chamber in half. His footsteps echoed, soft, human sounds swallowed by the hum of alien voices. Then, the whispers began. "Is that a human?" a scaled diplomat hissed in disbelief. "They send a child to represent them," another said, its voice layered with mocking tones. "Why did Earth even get a seat here?" Laughter rippled across the room. Even the automated cameras, floating drones that captured every meeting for the Galactic Archive, drifted away to focus on more important delegates. The human was barely worth recording. At the far end of the hall sat the Speaker of the Council, a tall, silver-skinned being whose eyes shone like molten stars. She held the Staff of Order, a symbol of unity older than most civilizations. When she struck it once against the floor, a deep tone filled the chamber, demanding silence. "Ambassador Daniel Reeve of Earth," she said. Her voice was cold, formal, unimpressed. "You have been granted 5 minutes to state your case for admission. Speak quickly, for the Council has greater matters to discuss." The translator drones repeated her words in hundreds of languages. A few ambassadors chuckled. Others leaned back in boredom. Daniel Reeve, the first human ever to stand before the Galactic Council, simply stood there for a moment. He looked around the room slowly, letting his gaze sweep across faces of flesh, metal, gas, and light. Each pair of eyes seemed to share the same emotion: contempt. To them, he was nothing more than a fragile animal who had wandered too far from home. The silence stretched. Then Daniel smiled. It wasn't a nervous smile. It wasn't forced. It was the kind of smile that belonged to someone who knew something the others didn't. He stepped toward the central platform. The circular floor lit up beneath his feet, scanning his form, confirming identity, projecting his image into the air for all to see. For the first time, the galaxy saw what a human truly looked like. No armor, no bioluminescence, no scales or claws. Just soft skin, bright eyes, and a calm, intelligent face. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," Daniel began, his voice steady and clear. He spoke slowly, letting the translator systems process each word. "I thank you for allowing me to speak on behalf of the people of Earth." But before he could continue, a low laugh rolled from the far seats. It was the Carthuel ambassador, a massive reptilian creature covered in gleaming green armor. 5 minutes, the Carthuel sneered. "That's generous. Humans still burn chemical fuel to reach their moon. They are children playing with fire, and now they wish to sit among gods." More laughter followed. The sound filled the hall like thunder. Daniel didn't respond. He just watched them, the laughter, the smugness, the arrogance, and let it wash over him. Then, slowly, the laughter began to die, because he was still smiling. The speaker tapped her staff again. "Continue, human," she said impatiently. "But speak quickly." Daniel nodded. "Of course." He took another step forward, and the holographic display behind him flickered to life. It showed Earth, blue, green, white, spinning slowly in the dark. "Before I speak," he said, "I want to show you something." The hologram zoomed in. Cities glowed, storms raged, mountains rose through clouds. Then, scenes began to play. Ancient wars, crumbling ruins, rockets lifting into space, explorers walking on alien worlds, soldiers helping civilians, hands reaching out to rebuild. A murmur spread through the chamber. Some aliens leaned forward. They had expected stories of weakness, not struggle, not survival. Daniel's voice stayed calm, but something powerful hid beneath it. You see, my people have lived for only a brief moment in the history of the stars, he said. But in that moment, we have faced everything our world could throw at us, and still, we endure. The speaker raised an eyebrow. Endure, she echoed. Daniel's gaze hardened. Yes, he said, because we have learned one truth. The universe is not kind. It tests everything that dares to exist. And yet, somehow, we are still here. The words hung in the air, strange and quiet. Even the laughter had stopped now. Some way above, the living glass of the dome reflected the blue of Earth's oceans, a single fragile color in a galaxy of cold light. Daniel looked up at it, and a faint smile touched his lips again. Then he looked back at the council, at hundreds of beings who believed themselves superior, and his eyes gleamed with something ancient and human. Courage. No one could have guessed what he was about to say next. Not the speaker, not the ambassadors, not even the galaxy's oldest minds, who had seen civilizations rise and burn to dust. Because within the next few moments, with one single sentence, the quiet human from a small blue world would silence them all. The holograms flickered, the lights dimmed, the chamber held its breath, and Daniel Reeve, ambassador of Earth, began to speak. Fade to black. Title appears. They mocked the human diplomat, until he said one sentence. The silence that followed Daniel's opening words did not last long. From the upper tiers of the chamber came the unmistakable sound of muffled laughter. At first, it was only one voice, low, mocking, but it spread quickly through the crowd like ripples on water. Dozens of alien ambassadors turned to each other, speaking in tones dripping with amusement. Some covered their mouths with clawed hands. Others didn't bother to hide their smirks. The great chamber that had stood in perfect order for centuries was now echoing with laughter, and all of it aimed at one small human standing alone in the center of it. The council speaker struck her staff against the floor once more, but this time even the sound of the ancient staff of order couldn't drown out the noise. Proceed, Ambassador Reeve, she said with thin patience. If you have anything else to say it now. Daniel did not flinch. He looked around slowly, meeting the eyes of those who mocked him. His face remained calm, almost peaceful. But the Carthuel ambassador wasn't done. The towering reptilian rose from his seat, scales glinting under the blue lights. Tell us, human, he hissed, his voice amplified by his translator drone. Is it true your kind still uses combustion engines? That you burn liquids to crawl through the void like insects on fumes? The delegates laughed again. Daniel said nothing. He simply inclined his head slightly, neither confirming nor denying. Another voice joined in, this time from the Terati delegation, tall insectoid beings with shining carapaces and eyes that shimmered like amber. I have studied their planet, one of them buzzed. Did you know they still fight each other for land? They divide their world into pieces and call it patriotism. Adorable, isn't it? A ripple of amusement followed. One of the crystalline beings from the Ander collective tilted its translucent head and added in a musical voice, perhaps the humans are here to surrender. I heard their population nearly destroyed itself during something called the nuclear age. Tell me, little human, how many times must your species rebuild before you learn peace? Daniel looked at the Ander delegate, his expression unreadable. There was a flicker of something in his eyes, not anger, not shame, but something colder. 3, he said softly. The laughter faltered. Excuse me, the crystalline voice asked. Daniel took a step forward. His tone was calm, but every syllable carried weight. Humanity rebuilt itself 3 times from near extinction. Once from the ice, once from the fire, and once from ourselves. A strange hush fell over a few of the closest seats. But the others, the older, prouder species, still found his words amusing. How tragic, one of them said mockingly. Such fragile creatures. Daniel turned back to the speaker. May I continue? He asked. She gave a short nod, clearly irritated. You may, but make it brief. He raised his wrist console and pressed a command. At once, the holographic projection above him changed. Gone were the gentle images of Earth, the clouds, the oceans. In their place appeared flashes of war. Soldiers in mud and steel, ships burning in orbit, cities rising from ruins. The holograms were silent, but they didn't need sound. The story they told was clear, a world that never stopped fighting to live. Daniel's voice remained calm as he spoke. Yes, we fight, we argue, we destroy, but we also build and heal and dream again. Every time we fall, we rise stronger. That is our curse and our strength. The chamber was quieter now. The laughter had slowed, replaced by murmurs, not of respect, but of discomfort. A member of the Ormal Dominion, a serpentine being with golden scales, leaned forward and asked, "And what do you expect from us, human? Pity? Applause? The galaxy has no time for sentimental species." Daniel looked directly at him. "I expect nothing," he said, "but I thought you should understand who stands before you." The Ormal sneered. "We understand perfectly. You are a violent, self-destructive race, clawing at the stars before you're ready. You'll burn yourselves long before you ever threaten anyone here." That drew a few approving nods. Even the speaker seemed to share the sentiment. She leaned back in her chair, her voice cool and dismissive. "Ambassador Reeve, the Council has studied your species extensively. Your kind is ambitious but reckless. Your technology is centuries behind ours. What makes you think humanity deserves a place among the eldest civilizations?" Daniel paused. He let the question hang in the air, heavy and echoing. Then, slowly, he walked to the very center of the light circle, where every eye in the chamber could see him clearly. When he spoke again, his voice was quiet, but every translator drone carried it perfectly. "Because every one of your species was once like us," he said. "Lost, divided, weak. You have simply forgotten." The silence that followed was absolute. The speaker's eyes narrowed. "You would lecture us, human." Daniel met her gaze without fear. "I would remind you," he said. "Empires rise, empires fall, but those who endure are not the strongest, only the ones who never stop getting back up." The words hit harder than anyone expected. For a long moment, no one moved. Even the holographic lights seemed to dim around him. And then, from the Carthuel's corner, came a low growl. "Enough riddles, human," the reptilian hissed. "If you have something to say, say it. What is it you came here for? What is it you warn us of?" Daniel's expression didn't change. His eyes, however, had lost their warmth. He looked around the room again, at the hundreds of species that had mocked, dismissed, and laughed. And in that cold silence, he finally spoke. "I came," he said softly, "to tell you what happens when you underestimate us." The entire chamber froze. The laughter died for good this time. Every translator drone repeated his words, one by one, in every tongue of the known galaxy. It was not a threat. It was something far more dangerous, a promise. The speaker leaned forward. "Is that so?" she said quietly. "Then tell us, human, what do you mean by that?" Daniel's eyes glinted. "You'll find out soon enough," he said. And with that, he turned off the hologram, leaving the chamber in uneasy darkness. No one laughed anymore. For several long seconds, no one in the Galactic Council chamber dared to speak. The lights had dimmed after Daniel Reeves' quiet warning, leaving only the faint blue glow of the central platform. Shadows stretched across the curved walls, and the ambassadors of 100 species sat frozen, unsure whether they had just been threatened or enlightened. Then, slowly, the speaker's voice broke the silence. "Ambassador Reeve," she said carefully, "you stand before the oldest civilizations of this galaxy. Choose your next words wisely." Daniel looked up at her. His eyes were calm, too calm. "I already have," he said. He pressed another command on his wrist console. The holographic dome above the chamber flickered again, then burst into light. The galaxy vanished. In its place, a storm of images filled the air. At first, the ambassadors thought they were watching an apocalypse. Cities burning, skies filled with smoke, oceans boiling with fire. weapons flashing across continents, explosions that split the horizon in two. Some delegates gasped. Others turned away. One or two even shouted, thinking they were witnessing an actual war in real time. But the images kept playing. "Stop this," the speaker demanded. "What are we seeing?" Daniel didn't flinch. "Our history," he said. "You wanted to know who we are. So let me show you." The holograms shifted, now showing human faces. Soldiers running through smoke. Doctors pulling the wounded from rubble. Civilians carrying each other through chaos. Daniel's voice, steady and low, echoed through the chamber. "This is what it means to be human," he said. "We have lived through ages of ice and flame. We have seen our skies burn and our cities crumble. We have torn our world apart, and every time, we have built it back again." The Carthuel ambassador leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "You call this greatness?" he hissed. "You show us your wars, your destruction, your madness. That is not strength. That is proof of your weakness." Daniel turned his head toward the reptilian. "You're right," he said softly. "It is madness, but it is also survival." The holograms changed again. Now the ambassadors saw humans rebuilding, laying bricks, planting crops, launching ships. They saw them rise from ashes again and again, through centuries of war, famine, and failure. Daniel continued, his voice growing stronger. "You see only the blood and the ruins. But look closer. Every time we fall, we'll learn. We adapt. We grow. The same fire that destroys us also forges us." He pointed at the image of Earth, bright blue, scarred by its past, still alive. "That world has tried to kill us since the beginning. It froze us, drowned us, burned us. And still, we survived. Because that's what we do." A murmur spread through the crowd. The crystalline ambassador of the Ender Collective tilted its glowing head, its tone uncertain now. "But why fight so much among yourselves?" it asked. "Why turn that strength against your own kind?" Daniel looked up at the swirling holograms, scenes of war turning into peace, enemies shaking hands. "Because," he said quietly, "sometimes the only way to understand peace is to earn it the hard way." For a moment, the room was utterly still. The Tsarati insectoids shifted uneasily, their wings fluttering softly. They were an old race, one that had known hive wars long ago. Perhaps, in that moment, they saw a reflection of their own past in humanity's fire. Daniel raised his hand again. The images faded, replaced by new ones, the great leap to the stars. Primitive rockets. The first station in orbit. The first colony on Mars. Small ships breaking free of gravity, crawling into the void, carried only by hope and stubbornness. "We reached space with nothing but metal and fire," Daniel said. "We had no gifts, no ancient engines, no divine guidance. Only our will." The speaker's expression softened slightly. She had seen hundreds of young species rise and fall, but never one that burned so brightly. "Still," she asked, "and you believe this history of pain and struggle gives you the right to stand among us?" Daniel looked straight at her. "No," he said simply. "It gives us the reason." The answer caught her off guard. "Reason?" she repeated. He nodded. "Because everything we've been through, every mistake, every tragedy, taught us one lesson that no technology can replace." "And what lesson is that?" Daniel's gaze hardened. "That no one is unbreakable." The words echoed like thunder through the chamber. Some ambassadors shifted in their seats. The Carthuel ambassador frowned, not out of anger this time, but thought. Even the oldest of them, species that had seen empires rise and collapse, felt something uneasy stirring inside. Daniel continued quietly, his voice almost a whisper now. "You have lived so long among the stars that you've forgotten what it means to bleed for survival. You have forgotten fear. But humans, we carry it with us. And because of it, we never stop preparing for the worst." The hologram changed one last time. Now it showed fleets of human ships, hundreds of them, leaving Earth's orbit. Crude, small, imperfect, but real. "This is what we are," Daniel said. "Not perfect, not ancient, but relentless." He let the silence stretch again. For the first time, no one laughed. No one whispered. Even the hum of the floating drones seemed to fade. Finally, the speaker leaned forward, her tone lower now. You speak with great conviction, Ambassador Reeve. But you have not yet said what you truly came here for. Do you seek alliance? Protection? Recognition? Daniel's eyes locked onto hers. His calm expression never changed. I came to give you a warning, he said. Every head turned toward him again. The speaker frowned. A warning. Daniel nodded. Yes, he said softly. Because the galaxy has grown comfortable. Safe. Untouchable. But the universe doesn't reward comfort. It tests it. It breaks it. He looked around the vast hall, at the proud faces of civilizations that believed themselves eternal. And then he said quietly, humanity is the universe's reminder that nothing stays safe forever. The chamber fell silent again, but this silence was different. It wasn't the silence of mockery. It was the silence of realization. Something had shifted. The speaker's eyes flickered, uncertain now. Be careful with your words, human, she said slowly. You speak as if you bring a storm. Daniel's faint smile returned. He straightened his suit, meeting her gaze one last time. Maybe we are the storm, he said. And with that, he turned off the hologram, leaving the chamber bathed only in the faint reflection of Earth, small, bright, and unbroken. The echo of Daniel's final words, maybe we are the storm, lingered in the air like smoke after battle. No one dared to move. Even the great dome above the chamber, glowing with the light of distant suns, seemed dimmer now. The stillness pressed on everyone's chest, heavy and uncertain. The speaker was the first to recover her voice. Ambassador Reeve, she said, her tone tight and cold, are you threatening the council? Daniel looked up at her. His expression didn't change, the same calm, almost polite neutrality. No, he said softly. I don't make threats. Then what, hissed the Carthuel ambassador, was that supposed to be? A warning. Daniel turned to face the reptilian warlord. Yes, he said. A warning. The word hung in the air like a blade. The Carthuel leaned forward, his scales glinting darkly under the chamber's light. You dare warn the Galactic Council, he growled. Do you have any idea who stands before you, human? Daniel's gaze didn't waver. Every major power in this galaxy, he said. The ones who decide the fates of entire worlds. The ones who've grown so used to being untouchable that they've forgotten what it's like to fight for survival. A low rumble of voices spread through the seats. Anger, disbelief, insult. The council hadn't been challenged in 1,000 years, not since the last great war that nearly tore the galaxy apart. The speaker's eyes narrowed. You are bold, ambassador, she said, her voice sharp as a blade. Too bold for someone whose species still burns metal to fly. Daniel gave a small, almost amused smile. Maybe, he said. But boldness is why we're still here. It's why we're standing among you instead of beneath you. The Ormal Dominion representative, a serpent-like being coiled around a podium, let out a sharp hiss. Such arrogance, she sneered. Your kind crawls into space for the first time, and you speak as if you are our equal. Daniel turned toward her. Equal, he said, his voice suddenly colder. No, we're not equal. Not yet. But you'd be a fool to think we'll stay that way. The Ormal recoiled slightly. The speaker struck her staff against the floor, the sound echoing through the hall. Enough, she commanded. This is not a place for posturing. If you have something to say, human, say it plainly. What is this warning of yours? Daniel paused for a moment. His gaze swept over the countless alien faces watching him. Curious, angry, amused, afraid. Then he spoke, his voice slow, deliberate, every word measured. You sit here in this shining chamber, he said. You speak of order, of unity, of peace. But outside these walls, whole systems burn. Empires crush weaker worlds to dust. The council turns its head away because it is convenient. A murmur rose again, uneasy this time. Daniel stepped forward, and the holographic lights automatically tracked him. When the council decides a world isn't useful, you let it die. When a species can't pay tribute, you let them starve. You call it balance. We call it cowardice. Gasps filled the chamber. No one had ever spoken to the council like that. The speaker's voice grew icy. You overstep, human. You have no right to speak of things you don't understand. Daniel looked at her, really looked, as if he could see straight through her composure. Oh, I understand perfectly, he said quietly. You've built peace on Fae. You've built order on silence. And now you've grown soft. So soft you can't see the cracks forming beneath your feet. The Carthuel ambassador slammed his clawed hand against the desk. Enough of your riddles, he roared. You think your kind could stand against even one of our fleets? Daniel tilted his head, as if considering the question seriously. Maybe not today, he admitted. But that's the thing about humans. We don't stay weak for long. The chamber erupted. Voices shouted in a dozen languages. Some called for the speaker to expel the human immediately. Others whispered that he might be right, that humanity's history of relentless survival was something new, something dangerous. The speaker raised her staff again, and silence fell once more. Her tone was iron. You claim to bring a warning, Ambassador Reeve. Then speak it clearly before I end this farce. Daniel nodded. He took one last look around the room, at the towering aliens, the glowing diplomats, the proud rulers of the stars, and then he said, with absolute calm, You mock us now because we're small. But remember this, every great empire that ever fell began by mocking the ones who would replace it. The words hit harder than any weapon. The chamber went still again. The speaker's eyes flickered, but she said nothing. Daniel's gaze swept the room one last time. I didn't come here to threaten you, he said softly. I came to remind you that every species, every empire, faces its reckoning. Ours came early. Yours is still waiting. He turned off his console. The holographic lights dimmed once more, leaving him standing in the center of the circle, illuminated only by the faint glow of Earth's blue projection. For a moment, no one moved. Then, from somewhere in the crowd, a single voice spoke, uncertain, shaken. Is that your warning, human? Daniel looked up, his face expressionless. No, he said. That was advice. The alien swallowed nervously. Then, what's the warning? Daniel's eyes darkened, his voice lowering until it was barely above a whisper. The warning, he said, is what happens when you don't listen. And with that, he turned his back on the council and began to walk toward the exit. Every eye followed him. Every sound seemed to vanish. The great doors slid open with a hiss, casting his silhouette in the bright light of the corridor beyond. For the first time in the long history of the Galactic Council, fear, real, instinctive fear, crept through the hearts of its members. Because somewhere deep inside, they knew the human wasn't bluffing, and that the storm he spoke of was already coming. The great doors of the council chamber were still open when the speaker's voice rang out. Ambassador Reeve, she called sharply. You will not leave until you finish what you came to say. Daniel stopped. The corridor light framed his figure, small, human, and utterly still. For a few seconds, he didn't move at all. Then, slowly, he turned back toward the council. Every eye in the chamber watched him. He walked back into the circle of light, his footsteps echoing softly against the polished floor. The chamber was so quiet now that the sound of his shoes seemed deafening. Daniel stopped at the very center again, the same place where they had mocked him. He looked up at the speaker. You asked for clarity, he said. So I'll give you clarity. The speaker leaned back in her seat, wary now. Then speak. Daniel glanced around the hall. Hundreds of alien delegates stayed back, beings who ruled galaxies, who believed themselves untouchable. Some still looked angry, some curious, most uncertain. He took a breath, then said quietly, Do you know what makes us dangerous? No one answered. He continued, It's not our weapons. It's not our ships. It's not our technology. He raised his hand, gesturing toward the holographic image of Earth behind him. It's this, that no matter how many times we're broken, we get back up. The Carthuel ambassador growled, his patience gone. Enough of your philosophy, human. You boast about survival, but survival is all you have. You think endurance makes you powerful. Daniel turned his head slowly toward him. Yes, he said softly, because endurance means you can't kill us without becoming like us. A few of the older races understood the meaning behind those words and shivered. But Daniel wasn't finished. He stepped forward, his voice lowering, every word sharp and precise. You see us as fragile, soft, divided. But you forget, every world we've touched, we've changed. Every war we've fought, we've survived. Every enemy that thought we were weak learned too late that we don't know when to stop. The air in the chamber seemed heavier now. Even the translator drones hovered silently, as if afraid to interrupt. Daniel turned in a slow circle, meeting the gaze of every ambassador. You mock us because we haven't reached your level of power, because we're still learning. But you should pray we never stop learning. The speaker shifted uneasily. Why? Daniel's eyes locked onto hers. Because the moment we understand the rules of your galaxy, he said quietly, we'll start rewriting them. The words landed like thunder. The crystalline ambassador of the Ender Collective rose from its seat. Are you saying humanity intends to conquer us? It asked, voice trembling like glass. Daniel shook his head. No, conquest is wasteful. We don't want to destroy what you've built. Then what do you want? The speaker demanded. Daniel looked up at her and smiled. To survive you. That sentence hung in the air, silent and deadly. At first, no one understood. Then, one by one, the ambassadors began to process the translation, the meaning behind those 4 quiet words. To survive you. Not defeat, not destroy. Survive. Because humanity always did. The first sound in the chamber came from the Tsarati insectoids. Their leader leaned forward slowly, mandibles clicking in uneasy thought. You mean, you expect us to turn on you? Daniel gave a faint, humorless chuckle. Expect. No. Prepare? Always. He looked up again, his voice steady but now filled with a quiet, terrible confidence. We don't come to the stars to start wars. But if someone brings war to us, we end it. Not with better weapons, but with the one thing no one in this room understands anymore. The speaker frowned. And what is that? Daniel met her gaze. Desperation. A whisper swept through the crowd. Daniel continued, his words sharper now. Every one of you here has forgotten what desperation feels like. You've lived for millennia behind shields and fleets, certain that you'll always survive. But we remember. We live it. And desperation makes us do impossible things. He raised his hand, and the hologram changed once again, this time showing humans standing in the ruins of shattered cities, helping one another rebuild. When our world ends, we don't wait for gods to save us. We dig through the ashes with our bare hands. When our leaders fall, we don't surrender, we find new ones. When our enemies crush us, we don't die quietly. We adapt. We fight back. We endure. The chamber was silent again, but it wasn't the silence of mockery or doubt. It was awe. Uneasy, breathless awe. Daniel lowered his hand. The holograms faded until only Earth remained, spinning slowly in the darkness. He looked around the room one last time. You can destroy our fleets. You can burn our cities. You can wipe out our colonies. But if even one of us survives, one farmer, one soldier, one child, then the fight isn't over. It never is. His voice dropped to a whisper. That's what it means to be human. The speaker's expression was unreadable now, part fear, part respect. She leaned forward. You came here, she said slowly, to tell us that humanity cannot be conquered. Daniel met her eyes. No, he said. I came here to remind you what happens when you try. The chamber erupted, but not in laughter this time. Voices overlapped in confusion, fear, disbelief. Some demanded he be arrested. Others whispered that the council should listen. But the speaker silenced them with a single gesture. She looked at Daniel long and hard. Then tell me, human, she said quietly. Is that your final message to the council? Daniel nodded once. Yes, he said, because the truth doesn't need to be repeated. He turned away again, walking toward the exit with calm, measured steps. This time, no one stopped him. As the doors closed behind him, The council chamber erupted into chaos, and in the quiet that followed, one thing became clear to every race present. They had laughed at the human. They had mocked him, dismissed him, ignored him. But after that one sentence, to survive you, no one in the galaxy would ever laugh at humanity again. The heavy doors of the council chamber slid shut behind Daniel Reeve with a hiss that echoed like a final word. Then, nothing. For the first time in living memory, the Galactic Council, the voice of 1,000 worlds, was silent. No murmurs, no debates, not even the clicking of the Tsarati's mandibles or the humming of the crystalline ander. Just silence. The speaker sat frozen in her seat, eyes unfocused, replaying Daniel's last words in her mind. To survive you. Such a simple phrase. So soft, yet it had struck the chamber harder than any weapon. The council had heard threats before. Entire empires had stood in that hall and sworn vengeance. The galaxy had seen conquerors rise and fall. But no one, no species, had ever spoken like that. Not with arrogance, not with pride, but with certainty. The Carthuel warlord shifted uncomfortably in his armor. His tail lashed once against the floor, making the nearest diplomats flinch. What manner of creature speaks like that? He rumbled. No one answered. The crystalline ambassador of Ander tilted its shimmering head, voice trembling like breaking glass. He did not boast. He did not threaten. He simply told the truth. From the back rows, the insectoid representative of the Tsarati rasped quietly. Truth? No, that was a warning. The speaker rose slowly, her staff tapping the marble floor. The deep note echoed, trying and failing to restore order. This session will come to order, she said, though her voice lacked its usual authority. The human ambassador has departed. Let us proceed to deliberation. But even as she spoke, no one listened. Every mind in the chamber was trapped in the same thought. What if he was right? The Draxian scholar, whose kind remembered histories older than most stars, spoke next. Do you realize what that sentence means? He said softly. It means they expect conflict, not because they seek it, but because they know it is inevitable. They prepare not for victory, but for endurance. The Carthuel scoffed. Endurance means nothing against annihilation. One fleet could wipe them from existence. The scholar turned his many eyes toward the warrior. And yet, could it? The Carthuel froze. The scholar continued. You've seen their records, their wars, their resilience. They have destroyed themselves more times than we can count, and every time, they rise again. Burn their world, and they'll build another in the ashes. Kill their armies, and their children will take up arms. Tell me, warrior, how do you conquer a species that refuses to accept extinction? The Carthuel said nothing. The speaker listened quietly, fingers tightening around her staff. Her mind was racing. The council had seen primitive species rise before, but none had grown so fast, so violently. In a few centuries, humans had gone from fire and iron to interstellar flight. They were unpredictable, unrestrained, and utterly unafraid of pain. The crystalline ambassador's voice cut through the silence again. If their diplomat speaks so, imagine their soldiers. That thought sent a chill through the chamber. The speaker finally spoke. Enough. Humanity may be defiant, but they are still small. Their fleets are few, their colonies scattered. They pose no immediate threat. But even as she said it, she didn't sound convinced. The Tsarati ambassador let out a dry hiss that might have been laughter. No threat. You heard him. They do not need fleets to be dangerous. They only need time. Around the hall, the low murmur of fear began to rise again. This time, not laughter or mockery, but genuine unease. The speaker struck her staff again. Order. The sound vibrated through the dome, silencing them once more. She exhaled slowly. We will reconvene in private session. The question of humanity's admission is suspended until further notice. All recordings of this meeting are to be sealed under Article 17. The order spread through the chamber's network, flashing red symbols of restriction. Within seconds, the drones shut down their feeds. Every hologram winked out. But the memory, the words, could not be erased. Every delegate there would remember them. To survive you. As the speaker descended from her podium, her assistant, a small avian being, approached nervously. "Madam Speaker, should we issue a formal warning to Earth?" She paused. "No." "Then, a sanction." "No," she repeated, softer this time. The assistant tilted its head. "Then what shall we do?" The speaker looked up at the now empty projection of Earth. "We watch," she said, "and we pray they never need to prove themselves right." Hours later, in the quiet of a distant corner of the chamber complex, two diplomats from opposing empires met in private. One was the HFY warlord, his scales dull in the low light. The other, the Anda crystalline emissary, glowing faintly with inner light. The HFY leaned forward. "You saw his eyes," he said. "That was not arrogance. That was experience. He has seen his people suffer and survive." The Anda nodded slowly. "They are still young, but I fear they are something our kind has not seen in millennia, a civilization that remembers what struggle feels like." The HFY's claws flexed. "If he speaks truth, then when the next great war comes, humanity will not break." "No," said the Anda, their crystal voice soft as glass. "They will grow stronger." The two stood there in silence for a long time. Then, the HFY muttered, "Perhaps we made a mistake mocking them." The Anda's light dimmed, almost in sadness. "Perhaps," they said, "we made a far greater one, noticing them too late." Back on Earth, unaware of the chaos his words had caused, Daniel Reeves sat in his quiet transport ship as it drifted toward the jump gate. He looked down at the blue planet below, his home, and exhaled slowly. He wasn't angry, not triumphant, just thoughtful. He had told the truth, nothing more. And somewhere deep inside, he knew the galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again.